Boom. We are inconsistency of being able to do a live stream. I probably won't do this too many more times. Just pre-recorded videos seem to be the best with all the travel and the difficulties with internet in the middle of the jungle. So back to the beginning here yet again. Let's see if you can all give me a thumbs up. Make sure this time is working. I've just stopped streaming on Rumble and Twitter for today, and we'll just do YouTube here to see how that goes. So awesome. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip over and I'm going to talk about, I made a post this morning talking about how Euphoria is here, profit taking has started. And I got a lot of like really brash comments of people being like, you have no idea what you're talking about. The having isn't here. It's we're not even close to Euphoria. And I one of the things I want to point out is that so I've got a friend. They're a family office. I don't know. They probably have like $3 to $6 billion that they move in and out of Bitcoin throughout the cycle. And the last time I talked to him, he's like, hey, Euphoria stage is here. Like we're going to, once that starts to run, we'll be taking profits. And for those of you that aren't managing extraordinarily large sums of capital in the multiple billions of dollars, it's really easy to go, yeah, I'm going to hold all the way to the very end of this cycle. But people who have a lot more capital, family offices that are managing a significant amount more, use the momentum of the upcycle to slowly start exiting positions so that they can get as much profit as possible. Because at the very top of the market, if they were to try to market sell $6 billion of an asset, it's going to nuke the open market price. So what they start doing is as soon as they get into profit, they start slowly shaving off. Best way to do it. You don't get all of the profit that you were looking for, but you get profit, which is when you're managing these significant amounts of capital, what you're looking for. So we are entering the Euphoria stage. Profit taking has started. Now, maybe not for you, but it's important to know that it has for the bigger players. And again, what that looks like differs depending on what the players are. Michael Saylor, for instance, says he's just never going to sell any Bitcoin. And this might be a great strategy, which is just to consistently only accumulate Bitcoin and keep selling shares of your stock to buy more Bitcoin. That sounds like a great idea. In the long term, this will probably work out. I think Bitcoin's price over the next 10 years could be in the millions of dollars. So it's easy to go, oh yeah, well just keep only ever buying Bitcoin. But right now, I think the important thing to do is understand that as we move into these stages of optimism and euphoria, that the bigger players have already a plan and are moving positions out at this point into a profit. If they accumulated the majority of it around $15,000 to $20,000, they're up 3x on billions. Like, what the fuck do they care about another 2 to 3x? So I want to go over a few things that I think that will help you understand this, so it doesn't sound like just total nonsensory. One of the things I wanted to take a look at here was actually some Glassnode data that they shared recently. And I've talked about this a few times. I've mentioned that over time, Bitcoin's price has become less volatile, which means that over time, as the price goes up, it has less room for upside. So here in orange, the largest growth cycle here recorded for on this particular graphic is from 2011 till 2013 cycle, which is in the thousands of percent growth. In red, the 2013 to 2017 cycle, you have just under 2,000% growth. In 2018 to 21, you have just under 400%. This actually shows the very top of the market, around $69,000 Bitcoin here on the left side. So every time Bitcoin cycle completes, we're actually losing significant amounts of the percentage of potential growth there today. So here we go all the way down at the bottom in black where we are now is the current duration and distance from previous all-time high. So do we think that Bitcoin is going to go higher in percentage growth than the 2018 to 21 cycle, or the 2013, 2017, or 2011 to 2013 cycle? Do you believe that at this current moment, Bitcoin's price will exceed the previous ones? And for me, the answer is no. Although I do believe Bitcoin at one point will hit a moment where the world is in a hyperinflationary state and Bitcoin runs from, let's say, where we are to millions of dollars and we go into a complete reevaluation of what a dollar is even worth. And maybe we start measuring more things in the price of Bitcoin, or more importantly, and most likely, the measurement price of things in Satoshis, because even though there are only 21 million Bitcoin, there are 8 decimal points afterwards that are called Satoshis. And that's an important mark to remember, because it means that what you might end up doing is measuring the price of something in a Satoshi. Just not too far off of a thought to think, but nonetheless here, I do not believe this current cycle is going to exceed the previous cycle or the previous cycles prior to that growth. I think this one is actually going to flatten out the growth curve as time goes on. I've talked about this. I talked about this in the previous cycles, and so far we've been right about that. We've been right that every time you see diminishing potential returns because there's more capital inside of the market. And that makes a lot of sense. The more people that start to buy it, the more people that accumulate it, even with the halving coming up, the volatility of the price, both to the up and downside, should stabilize. In fact, that's what we would like the most to see, is that actually Bitcoin's price stabilizes and in some way, shape, or form actually turns into our future stable currency. So how would you get there? You'd have to go through a hell of a lot of volatility first. So the other thing I think that maybe I said somewhat incorrectly is where we are in the particular market. We've passed the disbelief stage. We've moved into hope, and we are in optimism and belief. We are into optimism and belief right now, and basically just starting into thrill and euphoria. There are a few ways to look at this. Now, again, I somehow I write in this tweet, we are entering the euphoria stage, profit taking has started, and people are like, oh my God, why would you exit before the halving? You have huge sums of capital in this market that know how to play better than you do, because they have more money than you. The experience of saying, hey, if we've got $3 billion that are up 300%, like that's a good time to start taking profit. So nonetheless, we'll take a look at this in a few different ways. The interest over Bitcoin has jumped up to 51. The previous times we've seen Bitcoin jump over 50, it's always been near the top of the bull market, like in the start of the peaks of the bull markets, into optimism and euphoria when retail starts showing up. I think anything above 50 on Google Trends is probably euphoria. The other way to look at this is the Bitcoin Fear and Greed Index by our friends over at Look Into Bitcoin. This wonderful chart here also shows that we, all the previous bull market, we had day after day after day of peak greed, which is 90 and above effectively. So we've only had 90 a few times. I don't think we're in peak euphoria yet. I'm saying it just started. I still see how that was misunderstood in the tweet, but hey, that's people's mindsets. I always love when people who have less experience than me try to tell me what's going on too. They're like, oh, more people than ever will buy Bitcoin this time around. I don't know where you get that data from. It does not, that's not what we've seen. Although we have seen consistent growth, we have seen always diminishing returns cycle after cycle after cycle. So I don't see why that would change now. And you have a lot of big players that already know this game. Just because they can use an ETF now doesn't mean they weren't buying Bitcoin to begin with. So I think more of the halving is probably priced in than it was in previous cycles, just because you have significant more sums of capital. So for me, the question is, again, does this particular Bitcoin cycle exceed the previous cycles in percentage growth to new all-time highs? And at this moment, I believe the answer is no. In the future, I think we will hit a moment of hyperinflation and a complete debasement of the value of the US dollar because, hey, look, lo and behold, President Biden signs a $1.2 trillion spending bill. That's a ridiculous amount of capital that they are just pouring into the market somewhere, and it's going to show up in all assets. $1.2 trillion is going to show up in all assets because if we know that they're debasing their currency, the price of all assets will continue to rise. One of the unique things we saw here, too, is that gold miner dives into Bitcoin signing a $1.7 billion purchase agreement. Now, again, I just told you of a family office we know that manages 3 times that. It's not, that you won't see their name in the news for a reason, and they've been doing it more than once. So the second part here is the likelihood of more companies realizing that if they're sitting on treasury, US dollars, and we know that the government is consistently printing more of those US dollars, why would we want to hold them? Because they're being debased. We're basically being robbed. Bitcoin becomes a better store of value potentially for those big companies, and I think we will see more of this. But even with larger sums of capital that's now worth less, I believe that the volatility of this cycle will be less than the previous cycles before it. And again, what cycle brings us to new highs of all like percentage growth is likely almost a cataclysmic experience for you as an average individual on this planet, probably for everyone at that point. You will be very hard pressed if we are in the reevaluation of literally everything to Bitcoin to find something stable. And a lot of the prices that will exist at that point will just be numbers on a screen and will probably not be all that functional for you as a trader or an investor. So big players are already taking profits because this is the time to start. You start taking profits everywhere between Optimism and Euphoria. Now, I would probably think we're closer between Optimism and belief than we are direct Euphoria. So maybe I could have used better Wall Street cheat sheet psychology, but for me, everything above hope is Euphoria. And not just Optimism, belief, thrill. These all lie under Euphoria to me. And we're going to look at that in the charts. The other thing I thought that was interesting is we saw over $6 billion worth of Bitcoin moved by the fifth richest Bitcoin wallet. These funds haven't moved since 2019 when the whale address first received them. They moved them to a few separate addresses in the half a billion, and then 5 billion into a singular fund with only a few Bitcoin left in the initial address, probably just to have for fun as a souvenir or something like this. So where does this lead us? Well, let's take a look at the inflows and outflows. As you can see, since March 15th, the amount of inflows has decreased dramatically, while outflows have stayed rather consistent. This is where we've seen a lot of the price reduction over the last week or two. The other thing that was kind of fun to look at was the Dune data, where 4.17% of all the current Bitcoin supply is actually held by ETFs now. Now, if you hold Bitcoin in an ETF, I would caution you that you don't actually own that Bitcoin, and somewhere in the near future, you'll probably get rugged, just like many other third-party asset ownership kind of schemes have come into place. I believe the ETF is no different. Although I can't tell what the future impact on price volatility to the downside will be. If you own 4.17% of the current supply and you're up even 2x on your positions in this, that just dwarfs what most people see in the traditional S&P 500, etc. So I suspect that, and we've gone over this in the past, the more supply that single interests have also increase the upside potential will increase at one point the downside potential too. So it's not too far off to think that that will come at one day, but it's not today. I know it's not today, but again, just understand that the bigger players are taking profit, even though, hey, you before the halving think I'm going to hold on everything till the very last moment. That's not how the bigger players are going to move through this market cycle, because they want to sell into both thrill, euphoria, belief, all of that, because that's where there's liquidity to actually move that product and market around. So Glassnode actually had one or two little other pieces of data I wanted to share here. This was the MRV bands. I thought that was quite nice. Again, we've seen peaks past this movement. We've dropped down below. I think, and again, let's go over actually to our Bitcoin chart and take a little bit of a closer look at what we've been charting here. So this is our Bitcoin chart. Obviously, we're not at new all-time highs yet. But again, the question here is, from the bottom to the top of the market of 2017, let's go to the very tippy, basically the very tippy bottom to the top, was a 20x from $3,000 to $60,000 or $70,000 approximately. Let's actually go from the middle of the range there, so we just get a better, around a 14 or 15x, which is amazing. But before that, you saw a 200% growth followed by 80% retracement, and then into the 20x growth. So where we are now, here, again, I don't think the bull market is over. I'm suggesting that even here, if you're already up 3x in the billions of dollars, this is still a good profit-taking spot. And you need that liquidity of everyone coming into the market. So how high do we go here? Are we going to go 2,000% from the very bottom? Probably not. Do we go 800 to 900 to 1,000%? Sure. I think that $160,000 Bitcoin in this cycle is not out of the question. I think that's very likely, actually, somewhere between $135,000 to $170,000 Bitcoin. I think the bigger question that looms on a lot of people's minds, again, is the first one, which is, do we go into the hyper-ballistic, massive inflationary moment where dollars become worthless and Bitcoin is the only valuable, stable place to hold currency? I don't think we're there yet. I think we'll get there in the next 10 years, though, which is a hell of a lot closer than we were 10 years ago. So what I wanted to say is that this is the best time now to understand your plan for exiting into profit over the next, 200 days. There's a lot of telltale signs about what that is, but nonetheless, let's take a little bit of a closer look at Bitcoin. Currently, I think we're in what appears to be the trading range. I believe that here, let's go to the top here. This was actually another nice one we shared in the private den. First off, the widening megaphone pattern here, 0.7. We've broken up to the top. We've tested the top of the megaphone pattern. From here, it's bull market onwards. But how much more growth is really left? Even if we get to, let's say, $160,000, that's only 100%. So if you're up 300% and to the top of the market is only like maybe 100 and 150%, this is still a great place for those bigger players. So don't fade the understanding of what's going on in the larger market just because the halving is coming. A lot of those people already know what it is, and they've pre-bought. This is the first time, from what I understand, that Bitcoin's price has exceeded new all-time highs before the halving. That to me would likely indicate that the halving is more priced in than it was in previous cycles because the market price has already jumped into new highs. Now, could I be wrong here? Yeah, sure. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is the end of the US dollar forever and we just go from here straight to like $6 million or something. Or maybe we can go higher. Let's say from here we go to $280,000. That's still only 300% basically. That's effectively the exact same thing as what the market participants who purchased at the bottom to today have gotten. So to reduce risk, they will consistently remove profits from here on outwards. Whether that's you or not, you should still have a plan for how you aim to take profits in the next coming changes between the growth cycle of, I guess, what's more historically on the Wall Street cheat sheet called between optimism and euphoria is basically the prime profit taking. And they take profit all the way up this. These market participants have accumulated everything as low as they can, and they need people to sell it to. And they start to distribute everywhere between optimism and euphoria. And they're not worried because they're already up 350% on some of their positions. So it's not that big of a deal if you're talking about significant sums of capital. There was one more piece I wanted to look at today. Where was it? Oh yeah, back to the rest of our charts. We're going to dive in here. So on the larger Bitcoin area here too, generally, as soon as we start to break out of the top of the trading range is when Bitcoin starts its kind of blue sky price discovery. It's when we go into euphoria. I don't know. Actually, let me know. Let me know in the comments. Do you think that we're about to head to $6 million Bitcoin, or are we going more conservatively to $150,000 to $200,000 Bitcoin? Based off the data that we've looked at in the past and some of the other previous market cycle highs, for me, I suspect that, again, this is not going to be new all-time highs or new all-time high in percentage growth for Bitcoin. Rather, again, another reduced cycle into new all-time high growth, because that's what kind of you would expect to see is, a reduced volatility in the asset as time moves on, as the markets can accumulate. And the more kind of out of the box ridiculous growth pattern won't come until we see a true loss of faith in the US dollar, which isn't today, because we haven't seen faith lost in enough other currencies for it to be the US dollar's turn. For instance, the Canadian dollar will have to die first before the US dollar. So until we really start to see the US dollar die, or more importantly, other currencies before the US dollar really die, then Bitcoin is not moving into that multi-million dollar range in single cycle movement, which I believe is coming, but not this cycle. We're much closer though than we've ever been. So keep that in mind as well. Maybe it's this one. I just doesn't feel like it's going to be. Maybe closer to 2030. That feels like a much more broadened perspective. The next thing I wanted to look at here was Ethereum. So Ethereum's had a nice reaccumulation process go along here. Again, this is a type of reaccumulation after decline. I suspect we are in the final SOS and LPS phases before we start to move up and break into new all-time highs. One of the things that leads me to believe we're not going to see extraordinary price growth in Ethereum here, maybe it will keep track with Bitcoin now, is what just happened. Is that we've actually now seen a distributional phase and what's likely going to be a reaccumulation after decline. We saw this for Avalanche as well. Here's the recent reaccumulation schematic for Avalanche that we had drawn up. Let's go down to the 1 hour. It's a bit clearer here. This is where you have the top of the trading range turn into distribution first before the primary shakeouts. This is known as reaccumulations after decline. This is what I think Ethereum is doing here as well. Also, Solana appears to be doing the same thing, just on a different time frame. It appears to me that the backup and SOS phase, which is what we are in now for Solana, which will probably bring us to new highs for Solana, is going to create a new range here before breaking up and continuing its path. Now, this could shift at any moment if we can't get back above the top of the trading range. But for me, at the moment now, these all look like reaccumulations after decline for Solana, for Ethereum, and what we just saw with Avalanche as well, a reaccumulation after decline schematic taking place. Link broke to the top of its box, had a nice SOS, and is completing its kind of reaccumulation and backup phases. Link has had a lot of hidden volatility in it. We've looked at this in the past, that it's a really strange kind of accumulation cylinder with many touches and returns to both the bottom and the top of the trading range. I assume that the volatility in Link will stay pretty consistent for where it's at right now. I don't expect anything to change, although I think Link will do well in the bull market as a whole. I do suspect that all of this volatility will lead to a fairly big downside in the near future. So again, usually what happens too is that we see multiple accumulation ranges turn into a temporary distribution within the market cycle. It happened very cleanly last Bitcoin cycle, where you saw a big breakout, reaccumulation, final breakout. This was actually a distributional turnaround top. It led to a very small accumulation bottom. This was basically the best time to enter secondary positions. Massive growth in many altcoins, much of the alternative crypto growth, and that was kind of the final blow off top. So even within the cycle, you had a distribution followed by a small reaccumulation, and then the final kind of redistributional phases that took place there as well. So where does that lead us? Well, let's go take a look at the traditional markets and see what's going on there. I do suspect that seeing as yeah, here we go. Look at that. Seeing as the government just printed $1.2 trillion, what did we see? Another big cycle movement up from the last week. We looked almost 3% in the S&P 500, which is just fucking astronomical. And we see consistent bearish divergence here. The RSI is decreasing while the price is increasing. I think we will see a check of this at one point, and it will likely also include a fairly large liquidity check for Bitcoin too. I don't think that the S&P 500 is going to fail now, but I believe that what you're witnessing in the S&P 500 is not the growth of the market, but simply the degradation of the US dollars, which means that what you're witnessing is not your assets becoming more valuable, but again, the consistent devaluation of the dollar, making your assets appear like they are more valuable compared to the US dollar. I suspect the S&P 500 is going to go much, much higher from here as well, although I am waiting for a liquidity check of the bottom of this range, somewhere around 490, before moving up in a new all-time highs, probably around 600, which will likely end the signal of the market cycle. And from there, this is where I suspect we're going to be much closer to a movement into hyperinflation. I don't think hyperinflation is here yet, but it comes creeping around the corner real fucking fast, because it's usually tied right along with a total loss of faith and trust in governments that exist today. So we're not there yet, but we're getting closer. More and more people are starting to realize there's no reason to trust your government. Like, that's kind of retarded. Do you trust your government? Let me know in the chat below. Actually, we'll do a poll on Twitter, actually. If you haven't yet, go, or I don't know why it hasn't changed yet, but you can go to x.com or twitter.com. It says, do you trust your government? Now, this is an unfair, this is an unfair post because all of my followers will definitely not trust their government. Let's run this for 3 days. Do you trust your government? Whoa, that's not a, I love my spelling there. Oh, I can't edit it either. Oh, I'm gonna have to delete that post. my spelling is just off the charts there. Do you trust your government? There we go. We'll do it. We'll run a poll for 3 days. Click yes if you trust your government. Click no if you don't trust them. I'm assuming because of my followers, 99% of the people will say no. I don't trust my government. So we'll go back to the Wall Street cheat sheet kind of one more time here. Again, for all the big players, generally anything between Optimism and Euphoria is where they're exiting their positions because they built it at a multiple X lower. And when you're dealing with such significant sums of capital, you're stoked on that positioning. The other thing I would like to say is that if you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel and hit the notification bell, please do so. YouTube threw me in a sandbox and I've been stuck at 50,000 subscribers for like 3 years. And it seems like people are constantly being unsubscribed. So if for some reason you were unsubscribed or the notifications have been turned off, if YouTube doesn't like you, they seem to like to do this to people. So they kind of screw us over. So if you can, make sure you hit that bell notification. You'll be alerted of any of the times we go live and start chatting. I see Henry says only a total idiot would sell now. Henry, it sounds like you have a hell of a lot less money than the people who are selling now. So you might want to rethink what idiots look like because you are probably one of them as well. Could BTC supply on exchanges getting low because more volatility instead of less? Yes, Bitcoin supply on exchanges decreasing always creates more volatility in the market, both to the up and to the downside. Any long-term holders selling Bitcoin to short-term holders before having nothing new? Yeah, exactly. It's just the way it goes. When you're trying to move significant sums of capital, you do it throughout time. You don't go, yeah, we're at the top of the market, let's get out now, because there's just not enough liquidity for you to do that. It doesn't exist. That's why the price is so high, is because there's such low liquidity on the market. Thomas Williams says CAS is the one and BTC is a Wall Street asset. How low can it go after having? I think the future Bitcoin bottom will be probably $80,000 to $100,000. Do you think we are in optimism? Yeah, I believe we are just in optimism through now. But I've been trying to tell people to get fully invested, so maybe this belief stage is actually closer to where we are. And with the kind of reduced volatility with each cycle growth, that somewhere between optimism and belief seems about right. Because that my last videos, I was saying last chance to dance, motherfuckers. Like, you better be all in your positions. And I think I'm right about that. So between optimism and belief sounds the most likely. What's to keep Wall Street from selling everything, stocks and crypto, total rug pull? Because they don't, my sense here, Michelle or Michael, I think that's Michelle Ritter asking this question. Because what would they go back into? The dollar? If you know that the dollar is being inflated, the dollar is not an asset you would want to roll into. Lots of people have posted videos or comments around the selling by Mark Zuckerberg or all these big players selling into market hype. And that's pretty normal. A lot of the times they have things that are already expiring and plan to sell regardless of where the market cycle is at. So some of those, I'm not sure. I don't know a whole lot about Facebook or Meta's stock cycle, but they may have had plans to sell that going a year or two back to begin with. So hard to say exactly. I vote for Bitcoin at 170,000 this cycle. John Awild says, I didn't get the notification. Yeah, try that. Make sure you try to get the notification cycle clicked on. That way you'll be alerted of all of our live videos or any updates we make. Okay, awesome. So let's roll in. I just want to make sure the live streaming chat is still working. We had a little bit of troubles earlier on trying to pull this one out, so I want to make sure. If you can now, just give us a thumbs up. Let us know everything is going smoothly. I'm going to continue to pontificate here. Again, we've been in this rising channel here for the S&P 500. Significant amounts of growth here. I remember when everyone was screaming recession and Michael Burry went short like here, and I was like, well, bro, that's a stupid idea. It was clear we were moving into reaccumulation. I thought we've broken out past into a new SOS, waiting for that kind of final backup and LPS stage to take place, which I believe will create a significant amount of volatility in Bitcoin as well. Although by that point we may be into new kind of all-time highs from today, newer all-time highs for Bitcoin too. So worth keeping an eye on. I'm going to keep today's live stream a bit shorter because I did try this a few times all leading up to this event. So I've kind of maybe over talked for the day. But yeah, it appears to me that we are in another reaccumulation range for Bitcoin until we break either up or down. When I suspect it will be up, we could see a deeper spring here for Bitcoin in this particular reaccumulation range that does something like this, and we see a dip. But again, these have been these have almost always been less of a dip than I thought. Like the previous one, I thought we'd go to 36,000. We only went to 38,000. So even the springs here have been very, very shallow. I don't suspect Bitcoin's going to come falling down to $12,000. Everything points to bullish still. But just understand that as we go higher and higher and liquidity decreases, the bigger players are exiting day after day after day in very small amounts so that they can capture as much of that profit as possible. Because remember, if they tried to market sell everything at the top, they wouldn't get a good price at all. They could push the price of Bitcoin on one exchange down to $8,000, no problem, because that one exchange just doesn't have enough Bitcoin to handle that sell side volume. So again, remember that the bigger players play differently than you do. So yeah, you might not want to sell till after the halving, but don't fret. Some other bigger players are already trying to take advantage of the significant growth that they've seen in their portfolio already. Oh, nice. Good to see our little do you trust your government post here. Who are the fuck are these 5.9% of people that follow me that trust their government? Are you guys lying? Did you accidentally click yes? I don't believe you. I don't believe if 5.9% of you actually believe the fucking government. Maybe, but I don't believe it. It's like government bots that are clicking yes. It's the CDC. It's all these government organizations clicking, yeah, you should totally trust the government. That's pretty funny. So, what was the next thing I wanted to go to here? Yeah, so there's again the kind of the BTC inflows and outflows. Again, the inflows have decreased quite dramatically in comparison. Again, if you look here, actually this is the first. This is some of the biggest FBTC volume coming in. IBIT at some of its lowest, 360 million. But if you compare across the board, significant inflows took place between February and March, and now outflows, but only from GBTC. I think when we start to see more outflows come from IBIT, from FBTC, then we'll be close. You are seeing a little bit of distribution take place in BTCO and HODL. Here in BTCO, only 9.7 million, but again, not all of it is coming from just GBTC anymore. You do have a few from HODL and GBTC. So as the inflows start to increase, most likely from FBTC and IBIT, I think that will also signal like closer to a top. From now, a lot of these institutional investors who couldn't touch or didn't touch Bitcoin down at $15,000 are probably making this the new floor. Again, I suspect that somewhere between $70,000 to $90,000 will be Bitcoin's next bottom. So we're pretty much at the bottom of the next Bitcoin cycle now. So you could buy Bitcoin today, not sell it, and come all the way back down to where we are, more or less within the next kind of cycle low. Yeah, maybe they're trolls who like the government. I believe Matthew here is being sarcastic. I trust the government and I trust science. I believe that's sarcasm. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. He could have trust both of them. That would be a bad decision. So, I think that's actually probably a good marker here is to keep a really close eye on IBIT and FBTC outflows. When those start to increase, then we'll know we're like clear into the optimism stage, because the big players just won't hold on forever. They'll start selling day over day over day. But for at the moment, it's only GBTC. GBTC's outflows have been, kind of decreasing. We've had some big days, but it'll be interesting to see what happens next. So keep that in mind. Take a look over at the chat. Awesome. Glad to see so many of you are doing well. Thanks for the thumbs up. All the support. Howdy from Texas. Crypto Cappy says. Matthew says, ban me for sarcasm. You must be a you must be a delight at parties. Yeah, sarcasm over the internet is a little bit hard to tell. I think that's one of the reasons why people get mad at each other so often on the internet, is because like sarcasm is basically very difficult, or like playfulness is difficult on the internet. It's like in written terms, it's not the easiest way to tell like what someone actually is trying to get across in data format. Yeah, GBTC, again, the biggest spot, mostly through sales. Again, IBIT and FBTC. Those are the next two we really want to keep an eye on. Oh, this is kind of a nice one. You can see kind of day over day the decrease of GBTC. I mean, when we started here in January, 630,000 Bitcoin. Is that? Yeah, 621,000 Bitcoin on the daily spot holdings for GBTC. And since then, we've decreased to 347,000. So GBTC's overall holdings have decreased almost by half. Whereas IBIT here going, 25,000 Bitcoin, 45,000, 50, 70, 80, 100, 124, 190, 280, 240. So IBIT has basically accumulated all of between IBIT and FBTC at 135,000 Bitcoin and 240,000 Bitcoin. Is that correct? Yeah, it must be. 240,000 Bitcoin and 135,000 Bitcoin for both been accumulated by IBIT and FBTC. If I'm incorrect there for some reason, please let me know. Accumulating basically everything that GBTC has sold. So interesting to see that the majority of this is actually just in the accumulation of what GBTC was selling. And GBTC is in profit by a lot. Remember, there wasn't a great easy way for a lot of people who were in GBTC to actually exit that over the last few years. They were pretty much in accumulation mode only. So the fact that they have somewhere to exit to now, I think is pretty noticeable. So the important as well. So we'll have to keep an eye. Once we start to see these decrease, once you start to see the on-chain daily holdings of IBIT and FBTC start to decrease, that I think will signal like top euphoria, because those bigger players know how to exit day over day over day instead of holding on till the very last moment, and because they need to. They can't just sell all at once at the top of a market sell or something. Doesn't work. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate all of your guys' support. If you want to add some questions into the chat, I'll try to take a few minutes of our extra time here to do that. I think because we've had so many live stream complications, we'll just do maybe one live stream a week. And from there, we will do mostly pre-recorded videos. Just makes it easier. So if you want me to answer some questions, I'll do that now. So David Brumblow says, sarcasm does not compute in social media. Yeah, that's a fact. What's your guess about the ETH ETF? I think we get one, but I think that basically marks the top of our. We had a kind of a board discussion about this a few weeks ago, and the potential for the Ethereum ETF kind of marking the top of the price cycle here. Likely the idea will be that this will be a real buy the rumor, sell the news event. Ethereum's ETF is going to get approved. And then probably once it's approved, Ethereum's price just comes down, 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 day after day after day. But I don't think that stays like that forever in the future. I do believe there's room for layer ones to come in and do something interesting. You know, Bitcoin doesn't solve all of the monetary problems, although it solves a big chunk of the problems we were having. It still doesn't solve all of them. A lot of the global decentralized market, the fact that you can just trade Bitcoin for this or for that by using a DEX is extraordinarily valuable. So I think Ethereum will find new all-time highs, but I think those new all-time highs will probably be marked by the end in the approval of the ETF. That's our kind of current guess. I've been experiencing 24 years of transitory inflation, says R122. Yeah, sounds about right. David Brumbles says, thanks for all the great information, Tio. Oh, well, thanks for the support. I appreciate that. You guys are amazing. It's always fun to come over here and pontificate in the live streams. 197 live viewers, but only 53 likes. Come on, guys. Let's get that up to at least 100 likes. That would be great. If you can, just like the fucking stream, because YouTube hates me. So the only way we're going to get out of this together is if we give YouTube the middle finger by liking and sharing this video literally fucking everywhere until they have no choice but to promote my damn videos again. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna leave it at that. Well, I don't know. If you guys want to, if you guys want to drop some questions in the chat, I will give myself some space to answer more of them too. So, for fun, there's some wild stuff going on. Let's see. The do you trust your government? Oh, there we go. We're back down to 4%. This is better. Only 4% of the people in my following trust their government. I suspect it's lower than that. Hopefully by the end of this, if you haven't voted yet, please go to x.com, follow me there, and vote whether you trust your government or not. I'm really interested to see what this ends up at. I suspect it's lower. I think we probably get down to like 1.2% of the people trust their government in my following. And that's probably just some bot that works for the government. It's like some artificial AI bot, or debunk the funk. These losers are like, yeah, we totally trust our government and science. If you haven't yet today, leave a shitty comment on debunk the funk, or any one of these bad faith actor pharma shills. Just tell them to fuck off. It helps their day go by much better. Anyways, that's it. I don't see a ton more questions. Okay, there's one or two more questions come in. Okay, we'll go with that. Big fan, keep sharing your knowledge. What's your price prediction for Fetch by the end of this cycle? Fetch has actually already exceeded some of the growth I thought we would get to faster. So Fetch has been impressive throughout all of this. It's been one of our long-term favorites for growth and really exceeded all of my expectations. If you were following us back in the beginning of 2020, Fetch is up 30,000% since some of my first videos about it in 2020. Apparently, it's just been all in focused on Fetch the last 3 years, but whatever. 30,000% is no small growth. Even from the previous, 5,300%. So there's a massive amount of growth. How high does it go? There we go. 30,000% growth from our very first videos about it in 2020, bringing us up to a 20 to 30,000% growth there on some of those. I think the important part here is how high could it go is really looking at the market cap and the potential for something like this. I like to go to CoinGecko to do that. I'd like to check out Fetch. Let's see what their current market cap is at. Is it ridiculous or is it nominal still? A 3.2 fully diluted, or $3.2 billion fully diluted valuation. Almost all the tokens are out in circulating supply. $720 million in 24-hour trading volume, which is just fucking huge. Let's check out Anthropic. Anthropic's current valuation. That might give us some type of understanding of what the current Anthropic's $5 billion 4-year plan to take on OpenAI. There you go. So this is from 2023, so it's definitely higher than that now. Can you give me the most recent, the past month? Let's see if that does it. New 5 ways to invest in Anthropic. Yeah, it still doesn't tell me what the valuation of Anthropic is as of today. Okay, it only has funding for up to, as of July 23rd, Anthropic has raised $1.5 billion in funding and announced a $4 billion commitment following the month, and additional $750 million received financing of up to $7.3 billion in 1 year. It still doesn't show me its current valuation. Okay, well, that's not super useful, Wikipedia, but I guess who would trust Wikipedia to be helpful or useful at that point? Let's see. Let's see if Anthropic has any more data. I think this would be a good way to compare with Fetch. How much is Anthropic worth? As of 2024, $15 billion. Okay. So yeah, you could still see maybe like a 3 to 5x on something like Fetch in its current positioning. So 3 to 5x from $3. You could see it up as high as 10 or 15 bucks. Sure, why not? And it's been very powerful in its reaccumulation ranges here too. Like if you look, we had a question distribution. It doesn't appear to be distribution here. If we go back down to the hour chart, this actually appears to be a type of reaccumulation pattern as well. So I suspect Fetch is going to go higher here. If you straighten out the trading range, it start to look a little bit clearer as well. So it looks like we'll probably retest the bottom of the box for a few assets here. I don't think, if you don't have a position often built here, like I don't suggest it, because we've been screaming for months to build positions already. You could, as long as you're risk adjusted, to know that you're going to need to be exiting soon too. So you don't buy it to hold it for, or unless you're buying to hold for the next 10 years. That's another great potential here as well. But based off the current valuation at $3 billion for Fetch, the most I could see is like a 3 to 5x from here. Because again, remembering from the videos we posted screaming go long for Fetch at 34 cents, we're up almost a 10x. So I always love when people are like, the bull market hasn't started. It's like, we're up 10x. Also, I would like to point out this moment too, because so if you go back and watch my videos about Fetch in 2020, there's this rising accumulation channel we got super excited about. I actually took most of my profits on Fetch here way too early, because we're like, yeah, we're up from, well, we were pretty close to the bottom in entry, so it's pretty close to a 10x. We're up 10x, and then you saw a massive distribution cycle come in and a reduction of price of 80%. So one of the questions is, does Fetch see a big 80% price reduction before the market cycle continues? Again, this was the next market cycle up for Fetch was a 13x, then down 80%, then up another 19, or like another 500%, extraordinarily volatile within the price range. So you're going to want to keep a really close eye on Fetch, because it could at one point just do something like this, bounce up to $4 or $5 and then come all the way back down to $1.50 before forming an accumulation range, before going up to like 15 bucks. So expect volatility as we move further into the future. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. I know there's a bunch of questions you guys had asked, but my voice is starting to feel a little bit tired, because I tried to do like 3 live streams that failed before this. And it was a little bit frustrating. So thank you all for joining us today. It's Teal with the Arcane Bear. I appreciate all your guys' support, comments, likes. We're almost at 100 likes. Only 25 more people need to like this right now, and we will hit 100 likes. Thank you all for the support, and we'll see you on the next episode.